Welcome, everyone. I'm Eric Goldstein, the CEO of UJA-Federation of New York, and it's really gratifying to be joined today by many hundreds of leaders from across our diverse Jewish community to hear from and pay tribute to President Isaac Herzog. It's a wonderful testament to our community's broad and unshakable commitment to the state and people of Israel. I'm also honored to welcome this evening the First Lady of Israel, Michal Herzog, Israel's Ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, and his wife, Shlomit Erdan, and Israel's Acting Consul General to New York, Israel Nitzan. Yesterday, I had the enormous privilege of attending President Herzog's address to a joint session of Congress, only the second time an Israeli president has ever addressed a joint session of Congress. The first time, as President Herzog movingly noted yesterday, was more than 35 years ago, in November 1987, when President Chaim Herzog, the current president's father, addressed Congress in honor of Israel's 40th anniversary. Ateret Zakenim B'nei Banim V'Tiferet Banim Avotam. Children are the crown of their forebears, and the glory of children are their parents. At a time of ever-increasing political polarization in Congress, it's particularly noteworthy that the invitation for President Herzog to speak at yesterday's joint session was entirely bipartisan. Announced by both House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and supported by Minority Leaders Hakeem Jeffries in the House and Mitch McConnell in the Senate. Personally, I'll never forget yesterday's address. The emotion that welled up watching an Israeli president being escorted into the House chamber by dozens of leading Republicans and Democrats from the Senate and the House, the 29 sustained standing ovations that President Herzog received from every corner of the vast chamber and gallery, President Herzog's concluding declaration, Am Yisrael Chai, which he didn't even need to translate, met by thunderous bipartisan applause. What a spectacular, special day, and a day we can never, ever take for granted. And while the U.S. Congress likely didn't know the importance of the date when they made the invitation, yesterday, as President Herzog mentioned, was also Rosh Chodesh Av, the start of the 9 days that culminate with the fast of Tisha B'Av, marking the destruction of both the first and second temples in Jerusalem and the end of Jewish sovereignty in Israel. The Talmud famously states that it was Sinat Chinam, baseless hatred and infighting, that caused these tragedies, a lesson that resonates through the ages, including very much today. We're all painfully aware of the dramatic divides tearing at the fabric of Israeli society and the significant challenges ahead. And in that light, we're enormously grateful to President Herzog for his exceptional leadership and unrelenting efforts to bring the parties together, to try to achieve compromise for the sake of Israel's future, which, to be clear, is our future too. Because the story of the Jewish people, wherever we are, is inextricably intertwined with Israel. World Jewry is made incalculably stronger by a vibrant Jewish and democratic state of Israel, and Israel is made incalculably stronger by a vibrant and connected world Jewry. President Herzog has always understood this and has devoted his life to strengthening the connections between Israel and world Jewry. We must all commit to supporting President Herzog's vision, to bridging divides and finding common ground, and we pray for a breakthrough in bringing all sides together and finding a path forward to compromise. Thank you, President Herzog, for your extraordinary leadership and your friendship to our community. Thank you. And it's now my honor to introduce Israel's Acting Consul General to New York, a dear friend to everyone in the New York community, Israel Nitzan.
Good evening, and thank you, Eric, for a kind introduction. Thank you, everyone, for coming today as we welcome President Herzog to New York. This year we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the State of Israel, 75 years since the actualization of our people's dreams, a 2,000-year-old dream, desire to live freely in our own land, homeland, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. As we celebrate this anniversary, we're also celebrating 75 years to Israel's special relations with the United States. And the reason for this solid relationship is you, the people who are present here in this room, the American Jewish community. While we take pride in our achievements over the past 75 years, we continuously look at our current challenges and those of the future. We live, Eric, as you mentioned, we live in a period defined by polarization, a period in which people do not celebrate their differences, but rather let those differences drive them apart. We willingly live in echo chambers, communicating only with people who think like us, instead of engaging in dialogue with those who think differently. We do not talk to each other, but actually talk at one another. This is the reason why this visit of President Herzog is so crucial and so timely. We gather here this evening to come together, beyachad in Hebrew, to meet, to greet, and to hear from President Herzog. President Herzog is a bridge builder, a convener and mediator. He's a unifying figure to lead the way in these sensitive times. A couple of weeks ago, many of us, actually, who are here in this room, gathered for an initial discussion on Kol Ha'am, the voice of the people, an initiative created by President Herzog. This initiative aims to bring broad spectrum of our people together for one purpose: Jewish unity, the unity of our people, to strengthen our commitment to each other, to Israel, and to Jewish communities throughout the world. To further this commitment, the President will meet with a diverse group of young Jewish leaders tomorrow to listen to their concerns and their perspectives. The goal is to have an open and honest discussion on our shared future. Knowing that some critical issues will arise, the President seeks to hear the heartfelt sentiments of our dedicated future leaders. These conversations are needed today more than ever before. We need to be there for each other in times of joy as well as in times of need. We need to support Israel when Israel is under attack from Gaza. We need to pray for the families impacted by terrorist attacks. And we have here with us tonight Leah Goldin, the mother of Hadar Goldin. She should know, Leah should know that we all support her and pray for the return of her son Hadar, as well as the return of the 3 other Israelis missing in Gaza. We need to speak out as we face the rise of anti-Semitism, also here in New York, whether it's here or any other place around the world. We need to work together towards providing help to those in need. When we say need, we say we. It is Israel and it is the American Jewish community that can work and must work together to help other Jewish communities around the world, to aid to Jewish, actually from the last 2 years. This is to provide aid to Jewish refugees on the Ukrainian border and support for Aliyah from Ethiopia. We cannot let the current hateful rhetoric drive us away from each other. We should not be divided because of our differences. We need to remember that we are one people, one faith, one community, and one family. We all look forward to our program tonight, and I want to thank the UJA-Federation and the many partnering organizations, and you could see it in the banner, partnering organizations for making this event possible. So to get things started, it is my pleasure to introduce Biana Goredrija. Biana is a senior global analyst and a journalist for CNN based in New York. She has received many awards for her hard work, including the Keystone Policy Leadership Award and an Emmy Award for Outstanding Morning Program for Good Morning America. Please help me welcome her to the stage.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to be with you. Anytime the UJA reaches out, I jump quickly, but I think I set a record in responding to the email that asked me to interview President Herzog tonight. So it is an honor to welcome him to the stage. I know you're all here to see him and not me, and we have a lot to talk about, so I don't want to take up too much of your time in introductions. Mr. President, will you join me up here on stage?
Shalom to all of you.
Mr. President, it's so good to see you. It's good to finally meet you in person. You had a very busy week. You met with President Biden. You spoke before a joint session of Congress, making you only the second Israeli president to have done so, the first, of course, being your father. You were received with a warm welcome. As we noted, it's rare to see bipartisanship in Washington these days, and boy, you got it. I want to read something that you said in your speech. You said, Israel and the United States will inevitably disagree on many matters, but we will always remain family. Our bond may be challenged at times, but it is absolutely unbreakable. Based on your meetings in Washington, are you confident that that feeling is mutual today?
Absolutely. And I would want to develop this notion. I know that there are differences and arguments. It's quite clear. And that has happened throughout history on numerous times and events and circumstances. But clearly there is huge love and affection and affinity between the United States of America and Israel. I could have felt it yesterday out there in the rostrum, looking around this beautiful hall, the incredible seat of the strongest, of the elected members of the strongest empire in the world, all rising up from left and right, from both sides of the aisle, again and again and again, it's not something that you can ignore. It's something that runs deep. It was amazing. It was awesome. It was exciting. It was a very special moment, personally, of course, and for the people of Israel. There are challenges, and there are different views, and there are also streams looking forward, and I mentioned it, the gaps, especially with the young generation. It's a challenge that many of you are dealing with, also in Israel, but I'm adamant that the relationship is very strong, and I was impressed by meeting the entire current leadership of the United States of America.
We'll get to what's happening in Israel in just a moment, but I do have a few more questions about your visit this week. Perhaps to alleviate pressure on you, it appears that some form of an invitation for Prime Minister Netanyahu to visit the United States was made. When that will be, where that will be, we still don't know. But the Prime Minister's critics in Israel say the delay has to do with the crisis surrounding judicial reforms. His supporters say it's because of disagreements over Iran. And President Biden, when asked about the lack of a specific date, told CNN recently that this was the most extreme cabinet I've seen in years, and he brought up the issue of settlements and relations with Palestinians. Does the fact that there are at least 3, if not more, possible reasons floated as to why there is yet to be a date for an invitation worry you about the shared values between the State of Israel and the Biden administration?
So there was one very important sentence which I've said in the speech, that the relationship between the United States of America and Israel is something so deep in terms of its values and its shared interests, it transcends administrations and governments and coalitions. And as such, as you know, I did not come to the United States as anybody's emissary, only as the emissary of my people, of my nation, of the State of Israel, and I was very proud and honored to do so. Regarding the event itself, regarding the technicalities of Prime Minister's visit to the United States and meeting with President Biden, that was actually discussed in their conversation earlier in the week. And as such, they've agreed, and they're going to work on the procedure of doing so. I think that clinging to this type of issue here or there does not reflect the enormous depth of the relationship. I mentioned in the Oval Office, we've never had such close, intimate security cooperation ever in the history between our nations. I know, and I don't know everything, but I know a lot. You can trust me. This is really impressive. This is unbelievable. And whatever I said yesterday in Congress, I stand behind every word where I've said that it's a two-way partnership on issues such as security. It is.
Something you also did in Congress yesterday was really address the elephant in the room, because while you got roaring standing ovations and praise from both sides of the aisle, there were several members of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party who chose not to attend the session. And you said this: "I am not oblivious to criticism among friends, including some expressed by respected members of this House. I respect criticism, especially from friends, although one does not always have to accept it. But criticism of Israel must not cross the line into negation of the State of Israel's right to exist. Questioning the Jewish people's right to self-determination is not legitimate diplomacy, it is anti-Semitism." So my question to you, is, do you view some of the comments made by these progressive members and what they've said about Israel specifically as criticism from friends or as a form of anti-Semitism?
So I would say that when I grew up in New York in the 1970s, it was clearly a different atmosphere. I remember 1976, okay, the bicentennial of the United States of America. 4th of July, 1976. News come in as to the heroic rescue raid of the Israeli army in Uganda, in Entebbe, rescuing Israeli hostages 4,000 miles away from Israel, 4,000 kilometers, I think. And it was a daring operation. And my father was the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, just like our good friend here, Gilad Erdan. And there was a huge event in the New York port on a U.S. aircraft carrier, the Forrestal, with President Gerald Ford. And the person who attracted most attention in that event, where there were leaders from all over the world and media from all over the world, was the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations because of the rescue raid which riveted the world. And we were very proud to walk in the streets of New York. I understand there are evolutions in societies and opinions. And I've said it. If you look around in the Congress yesterday, you could have seen the clear, outright majority. But there should always be a dialogue with dissenting voices, explaining to them the real truth of Israel. What is our problem? Clearly, I said, I don't shy away from mistakes or faults or weaknesses that happen in Israel, but can you show me any other nation that doesn't have it? Every other nation, including, the United States of America, has challenges, deep challenges, in the current days in the way society behaves, in the way society responds to basic attention span, receipt of information, verifying facts, and then therefore it's very easy to bash Israel on things. It's very easy to portray, and you know it, those of you who know Israel, how people who come back from Israel say, but that's not what we were told. That's not what we were reported at. That's not what we read every day in this important paper or that. And therefore, the truth is somewhere else. Yes, we are the first ones to admit faults and mistakes. And I've said it to my best friends in America in this visit. But at the end of it all, we are first of all a very distinguished and very, as you know, I would say, dignified, truly dignified democracy. We are challenged in ways that very few nations are challenged. We are seeing the empire of evil from Tehran sending its forks all around the country, from north, from Hezbollah, from south, from Gaza, from Iraq to and through Syria, and so forth and so on. We are seeing terror day in, day out. At the end, we defend ourselves. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes we make mistakes. We don't shy away from social phenomena that we have. We know that there are extreme elements in our society, but it happens in many societies, and one has to stand firm and explain and show the beauty of our country and the great achievements and the great good that the State of Israel is giving to the world, the enormous amount of fields that we are impacting the well-being of people all over the world. And I outlined a few of them in my speech. So that's why I'm saying it should be a balanced picture. And I'm telling those members of Congress, come learn the facts. I've hosted dozens and dozens of members of Congress and senators in Israel in the last 2 years. It's amazing to see how one simply needs to show some of the evidence and the facts to make things clearer and more reasonable. We were criticized about the operation in Jenin. I had a meeting now with the Secretary General of the United Nations. Guys, this is one of the centers of you can call it one of the centers of terror and taking lives of innocent people in Israel. That's where it's all based. We had to go in, we went in. No citizen or uninvolved person was hurt. We had 1,000 soldiers there. We went in and we unraveled a whole operation, huge operation of terror and hatred. It's just like NYPD would go into the center of the mob and work there. That's what you need to do. At the end, sometimes you have no choice. You don't want to, but you have to in order to defend your people. And therefore, we should not be misjudged and mistreated with an unbalanced compass looking at the facts. And that's what I'm telling these Congress people.
I want to turn to the unprecedented challenges that Israel is facing right now, specifically with regard to the judicial overhaul and the massive backlash that we've seen playing out on the streets for, I believe, 28 consecutive weeks now. At issue today is the reasonableness clause, and for those that aren't aware of it, it is which the Supreme Court currently has authority to invoke to strike down certain decisions made by the government. At issue right now is the government pushing forward legislation to take away that authority from the Supreme Court. It has passed its first reading, and the second and third are expected this week. Prime Minister Netanyahu just tonight in a primetime address said the legislation is going forward, but he's still seeking broad agreement. You yourself tried to mediate this issue and couldn't find a compromise at the time. Do you think that this legislation in its current form is destined to pass this week?
So these are critical days on this issue. I can give you a whole legal lecture about the ramifications and the way this discussion has been involving Israel for the last 30 years. But I spoke about it at length to national speeches and to the Israeli people. There were times when I alerted on some of the legislation or when it was originally introduced clearly, and then I came forward with an alternative. But now it boiled down at this given moment to the issue of reasonableness. I have here a good friend of mine, Steve Coppell, who went with me to school in Ramaz when I studied in Ramaz. He's a big lawyer. So Steve gave me a whole memo about the way judicial review looks at these legal theories, where instead of reasonableness, is it capricious, malicious? In every state and every country, it's done differently. So it's a legal issue that one can speak about. The question will be how wide the legislation is. And on that, at these given moments, actually right now, there are efforts to try and find solutions. And I hope that leaders will be responsible, open, and attentive to the ability of finding amicable solution and wide consensus on this issue. Because I truly believe that the alternative to the Jewish people, to the unity of Israel, is bad, is dangerous. And that is why I keep on repeating my message throughout to the political system, the people of Israel. Sit down, try to find a way to resolve this. If one side wins, Israel loses.
In meantime,
I will just add, Biana, that the issue, the debate, and these are very tormenting and painful moments in Israel right now. I'm here, but my heart and soul is with the people of Israel, with the dear citizens of Israel, with those who are worried and those who want to move forward, with those who are worried because at the end, many people in Israel do not know, and they don't have a clear picture as to how the process of the legislation, the entire process, the initiatives will end. And that's something that I've also heard in Washington. Meaning, what is the end result? Would it stop only by this, which is one consideration to look at, or is there other chapters ahead? And that is, I think, part of the source of unclear vision of how things will look out at, how they will turn out to be, and this impacts the discourse in Israel as well.
you mentioned Washington, so I want to go back to President Biden because he had a busy week as well. He spoke with you, he spoke with the Prime Minister, and apparently he spoke with Thomas Friedman. And on this issue, he had a message that he wanted Friedman to pass along to the Prime Minister, and here's what he said. Please stop now. Don't pass anything this important without a broad consensus, or you are going to break something with Israel's democracy and with your relationship with America's democracy, and it may never be able to get it back. When this government was sworn in 6 months ago, you told world leaders who were concerned to judge this government by its actions and not its words. We've seen its actions now. So should world leaders, including the President of the United States, be concerned?
I was told you're a very friendly interviewer. Well, anyway, I like frank and honest questions, but there are certain questions that you don't expect the President of the state, who's above the political realm, to answer in detail. And I think, of course, that there are, at the end, this is a political debate between one school of thought and the other, one coalition and the other, and therefore, this is simply another tribute to Israel's democracy, that there is such a heated debate, that there is a variety of opinions, and I hope the people of Israel, and they will express their views at whichever time and form and manner will require them to put it in the ballot boxes. And I don't think that I should answer this question in depth.
Okay. I think it's only fair that I asked,
Pardon?
but I appreciate your answer.
Yeah, it's fair of you to ask, absolutely.
From a national security perspective, we already know that 160 Air Force reservists, if not more, have threatened not to show up if this legislation passes next week. Are you concerned that that creates an opportunity for Israel's enemies to sense weakness, and does that lead to a national security threat?
So first of all, I keep on saying, I said it from my first speech on 12th February, that I know, this I truly know, that our enemies are interpreting the situation in Israel and the arguments that emanated with the United States of America as a sign of weakness, and they may try to miscalculate the situation. So my answer is has two facets to it. One is the relationship with the United States, as was shown this week, clearly as was shown, and expressed by the clear words of President Biden on his commitment to Israel's security in the ironclad alliance on security, should not be mistaken. Our enemies should not be mistaken. It's as strong as ever, and I confirm it. And secondly, I think our enemies sometimes miscalculate the Israeli aggressive, open, vibrant, extremely vociferous debate wrongly. They don't understand what democracy is all about. They don't. With all due respect, what does a person do when he doesn't like something in a democracy? He protests. She protests. I think the fact that there are so many protesters throughout the country is a tribute to Israel's democracy, and we should respect it. And as such, our enemies should not miscalculate the fact that if, God forbid, there is anything, the people of Israel unite immediately. And I hope that the issue of not serving, not going on reserve duty, I really, truly, I said it on numerous occasions, should be out of the political debate. I know I'm a bit perhaps naive at this stage, but I sincerely hope it will fade away.
So I have two more questions before I open up to, we have a few questions that were submitted by audience members.
Okay, sure.
I want to turn to Ukraine, because President Zelensky has made his frustration with the state of Israel very clear in terms of what he views as the lack of support, material support, in this war. He has repeatedly asked for help with air defense, specifically Iron Dome, to no avail. Now, I know Israel has offered substantial humanitarian aid, but in comparison to other Western allies, Israel has not delivered what its allies have. Why not? And do you worry that this will put Israel on the wrong side of history?
So there's a kind of a naive viewpoint on looking at this situation, and sometimes it's an oversimplified discussion. So let's put the record straight. Next month, please God, an early detection alert system will be deployed in Kiev, founded and established by Israel for all citizens of Kiev, then for all citizens of Ukraine. It's an early detection warning system. It will be like every Israeli has, and it will tell them where and when they may be attacked at a given moment. And this is vital for their well-being and their protection. I'm saying this not in order kind of to wash away the claims, but I'm just giving the picture as a whole. There is a lot of discussion between us and the authorities in Ukraine. Mrs. Zelensky, the wife of the president, just was a guest of my wife, First Lady Michal. Just a few weeks ago, I met her myself. It was an incredible visit, and it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's a serious visit. The Jewish Federations of North America and the Federation here were all involved in working together for the last year, including with Israeli NGOs who are leading in the world on post-trauma, dealing with emergency situations and medical services for the entire home front of Ukraine. And Michal led this initiative for the last year, and it became a huge success. So before people complain, I will add that Hebrew is the most highly spoken language in Ukraine by volunteers from Israel all throughout this period, that we realize clearly that the involvement of Iran in this war, the fact that Iranian drones are killing innocent civilians in Ukraine is another reason to tell the world what Iran is all about. I may also remind everybody that we have Russian presence in Syria, not far away from us, that we have about 1 million Jews in Russia. So we have made it clear that we have a certain policy on lethal weapons where we are very cautious that state secrets and lethal weapons, state secrets will not fall in the hands of enemies, and lethal weapons therefore will not be used. But on so many other issues, we are doing good. And of course, in the international community, and Ambassador Erdan will confirm, we are ironclad supporting the Ukrainian demand, especially for territorial sovereignty and all other resolutions.
My final question is on the issue, the important issue of anti-Semitism, but just to put a button on Ukraine. I believe the last time you were there was in 2021. And just last week, President Zelensky criticized Prime Minister Netanyahu and his two predecessors for not accepting an invitation to travel to Ukraine now. If you were offered an invitation, would you travel to Ukraine?
So actually, it's an issue that was never brought to bear with me, and we have an intense dialogue with Ukrainian representatives on many issues. I also spoke with President Zelensky a few months ago. He was my first host as President of Israel. We then marked the inauguration of the Babi Yar Center in Babi Yar. Our heart goes to the people of Ukraine for their pain. We're not indifferent. We're doing a lot of things, and if the opportunity arises, we'll review it, naturally.
So now to what I presume everyone views as one of the most important and frightening issues, and that is the rise in anti-Semitism. Reports of anti-Jewish incidents that are an all-time high since the Anti-Defamation League has been keeping track. With almost 3,700, yes, our friend Jonathan's been very busy for all the wrong reasons. Almost 3,700 reported incidents across the United States in 2022. Roughly 40% of American Jews say that they have changed their behavior in some way because they're afraid of anti-Semitism. It doesn't help when some of this anti-Semitism comes from high-profile individuals, most recently a presidential candidate. RFK Jr. last week was on video saying that Ashkenazi Jews and Asians were somehow ethnically immune from COVID. Aside from idiotic, how did you react when you heard that and when you see these types of numbers?
So anti-Semitism is a major challenge that I've been dealing with. The entire vista of Jewish leadership has been dealing with, and many, many world leaders and American leaders have been dealing with. I was impressed, truly impressed, to hear the leadership of the houses, both houses yesterday when I met them, how staunch and strong they are on combating anti-Semitism in America. They're very much on alert. I had an incredible discussion with your Vice President, Kamala Harris, and she and her husband, the second gentleman, were very proactive, and then President Biden came forward and approved the first ever national strategy to combat anti-Semitism, a presidential. I recommend to read that document. The special emissary, special envoy of President Biden, Professor Deborah Lipstadt, is clearly one of the greatest scholars on earth, one of the greatest scholars on earth on this topic. Her books, her fights against David Irving, then the Holocaust denier, have brought her up to this seat. And now this paper, I read it from cover to cover, is amazing. Now we have to implement it. Well, now we have to see the administration, of course, follow up and implement this strategy. And I know ADL and other organizations will definitely follow suit in conversing and having a very close contact and interface with the administration, because this is vital. We see it on campuses, we see it in synagogues, in communities, we see it all over. I don't have to repeat what you've said. It's all over the world. And it always, we always say, it always starts with the Jews, it never ends with the Jews. So therefore, we should support this strategy and make sure that it is implemented constantly, forever, not altered or changed by anybody, because it encompasses all the age groups, all the various facets that from there it emanates, such as social networks, such as brainwashing, such as terrible rhetoric, which you've just mentioned, horrific and terrible rhetoric. So I think we're all united in this battle, which is one of the key battles of the era.
I'm going to thank you for that. I'm going to turn it now in the remaining minutes we have to a few of the audience questions which were submitted, so I'm just going to read them. The first is, how do you think your background and your friendship in the religious sector feeds into your ability to navigate the growing divide between the religious and secular communities?
So it was mentioned by Israel Nitzan, the acting consul general, correctly, that in this room we've convened one of 18 labs under my initiative, the Voice of the People, Kol Ha'am, to discuss the challenges that are facing world Jewry all over the world, 18 labs all over the world. It's only the beginning of my entire initiative, which is to form a platform of dialogue. We have great organizations. As you know, I was the chair of the executive of the Jewish Agency for Israel, and as such, that's a very good organization. And I've partnered with the Jewish Agency in WZO as to implementing my vision here, but the idea is also to identify the future leadership of the Jewish people. The Jewish people are ever changing, ever evolving. There are so many new developments. And I truly believe, for example, if you look at current politics in New York, so it's also a mirror image of the current politics in Israel. there is a growing ultra-Orthodox Haredi community. One has to have them in the room as well for dialogues. In the past, they were less present. Now they need to be more present. And there should be a real dialogue between all streams of Judaism, something which I truly respect and believe. There are friends here who I love, and we were discussing it with them all my life. And I was very honored and proud that all the leaders of the streams of Judaism were present in my speech yesterday. It's a picture which I wanted to send to the entire world to show what love of Israel is all about.
Although so much has changed, what learning from your father do you apply to how you yourself fulfill the office of President of the State of Israel? You have big shoes to fill.
Let's make it the last question.
Okay.
Meaning, let's go others and then get to it, because that's like more personal.
You want me to come back to that?
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
In your current role as President of the State of Israel, any specific goals you would hope to achieve? You've got 5 more years, I think, right?
Let's first understand, the role of the President of Israel is a European model, or other nations that have a model of a head of state who is not an executive and has no real executive rights. And however, the presidency in Israel has huge moral clout and soft power. And I am treading in the footsteps of many great Israeli leaders who are president of Israel and understanding the importance of the moment. Right now, the importance of the moment is to keep the nation of Israel unified amidst its tormenting internal strife and debate on the judicial reform, but it's much larger. It's an issue that has to do with how we move forward. And, of course, protect and preserve the democratic values of the State of Israel. But more than that, I want to speak to the entire world of Jewish communities around the world. And I've put that as a major challenge of mine and a major topic on my agenda. And, of course, they represent the voice of Israel, the name of Israel in the international arena, focus on the main challenges of Israel internally. Together with my wife, Michal, we focus on many, many issues. Many issues, the Arab community and its challenges, the Ethiopian Olim community and its challenges, the diversity of Israeli society, which is fantastic. And there are many partners here who work with us on this. And so many other issues of an evolving, fascinating, wonderful, incredible people that we have.
Well, you will be a spry 67, very young, a lot of future left ahead of you.
Here
There's
she
rumors
goes
about
again.
what you may do after your role as president and go back into politics. So if there's anything you want to announce, feel free. But in the meantime, I do want to close by talking about the big shoes that you filled. And of course, that is your
father. But I'll just say about your comment, Michal says, if you want to go to politics, that's only with your next wife.
Okay, enough said. Should I ask you the question again about your father?
Yeah, so I'm very proud with my family lineage. It was always part of my DNA. I will remind to this distinguished audience, my family stems in so many circles of life that impacted the world in the last 100 years. I had an illustrious uncle who was a legend here and in Israel. His name was Abba Iban. He was a legend. Was Israel's voice in the 50s and 60s when he was a star in America, the first Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, was ambassador in Washington and foreign minister. I had another uncle, was a huge diplomat, Rabbi Jacob Herzog, who was the Director General of the Prime Minister's office. So you can imagine, with my father being a very famous Israeli major general in the army, and my grandfather being the chief rabbi of Israel, what happens on Friday night dinners for a young boy? We hardly spoke at the New York Nets or Knicks or anything like that, believe me. And therefore, I am very proud to follow these footsteps. and learn a lot from my forebearers. The women in my family were giants as well, believe me. My grandmother, my mother was the first environmentalist, the first green fighter in the state of Israel. I had two great aunts who were incredible ladies. So we're a serving family. I'm very proud that my brother Mike is the Israeli ambassador to the United States. And therefore, I'm honored to continue this legacy. But I will say, of course, that as we say, Bechol Dor Vador, in each generation it has its own challenges. And therefore, I take my decisions and my actions only through my own personal moral compass, my own conscience, and the way I interpret best how to serve the State of Israel, its people, the Jewish people, and our nation.
Well, Mr. President, you have much to be proud of with your family and your legacy, and I just want to close by saying, as a proud American Jew who came to this country as a political refugee from the former Soviet Union thanks to an Israeli visa, I will forever be indebted. And as a journalist, as a journalist, pursuing democracy in a better country is something that unites both of our countries, as I know many of the journalists at home who may annoy you, but they have the same right to do the same. So it's an honor, and thank you so much.
And just before we finish, you know, the greatness of the Jewish people is that we care for even the single individual. The fact that Hadar Golden's mother, Leah, is here with us today is a huge issue. Let me just remind everybody, for 9 years, Hadar has been abducted and is in Gaza. Also his colleague, Oron Shaul, they both fought for the State of Israel in battle in Protective Edge. Two other Israelis, a Muslim, Hisham al-Said, and an Israeli of Ethiopian origin, Abera Mengistu, are also in Gaza. We are doing whatever we can to bring them back home. I think we should all be united in supporting Leah, who's here, her and all her colleagues in the pursuit of freedom.
We are thinking of you, as well as the family of Elizabeth Surkov as well.
Yes, absolutely. Elizabeth Surkov, who's now in Iraq and has been abducted there too. You're right. Thank you very much for this honor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
I want to thank the Jewish Federation of New York, my good friend Eric Goldstein, the entire board, and all those who have partnered in bringing us together.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.